So welcome to another video. This one is going to be our update video for the Fume-hood. So let's get into that. So we ran into a few issues with our hood. For starters, there's a few things that you need to know about these types of things. So basically what's inside this baffle right here is 4 stages of filtration. The first one is kind of like a furnace filter in a way. It's just for collecting the larger material like ash and stuff like that. And then there's a charcoal filter designed for scrubbing a certain chemical out of the air that's passing through it. Then there's another one for another type of chemical. Now I don't exactly know what they are. I was told that one was for scrubbing alcohol and the other one was for scrubbing something else. I don't know exactly what they are, but they're formulated very specially for burnout. Now, if you wanted to, you can also switch those out for other things. I'll get to that in a little bit. Anyway, the 4th stage is the HEPA filter, which is a 99.9% filtration. So if there's any ash whatsoever getting through those first filters, that's where it stops. Now, we've had a little bit of issues with it in that, well, we're in an enclosed space. My studio is basically 2 rooms. This is a smaller room where I've got my soldering. We've got all the, kind of the dirty work, as it were. We've got polishing, sanding, stuff like that, where I want to contain the dust and fumes in this case. Now, of course, fumes are not ideal in any situation. I want that fixed as much as possible, which is why we got that. Anyway, and then there's the main work area where we've got all of our benches, the shear, hydraulic press, things like that that don't require, a destruction. They're not a subtractive work process. So let me just show you how the filters work in this little system. So under this baffle are the filters. Now I'll take off the thumb screws and you can see exactly how this looks. This is designed to be airtight. So there's this foam padding around it to make a nice seal so that you're only drawing from underneath. So there's this one. This is the one I mentioned, kind of like the furnace filter in a way. So this one, you can see there's a little bit of ash just inside there. Not too much, because I've only done 3 burnouts, so naturally these are all pretty much brand new. And then there's these guys. So this is GCP and APC. Now exactly, I think this is the alcohol one, and this one I think is just general. And they're both labeled as odor filters. So this is what's doing the majority of the work. And these are just these great big chunky, they're actually quite heavy, cartridges that just slip in on these rails. Now what I've found through my extensive calls with Quatro, when these are spent, when you need to get new ones, what they do is they actually send you just a bag of the charcoal media, and then you just kind of take off the end cap and dump what's in here in the garbage. So they don't send you a brand new cartridge, in case you're curious down the line. Now there's this is the HEPA filter. It's got a bit more of a seal here on the bottom. And yeah, it just generally does some more of the fine scrubbing. And then up here is the fan mount, and that exits right out the top. Now, we've actually had quite a bit of issue with noise, and the noise is actually because of how we have it set up here in the room. So we have I don't know what this is exactly architecturally, but we have this kind of wall bump, and then we've got the corner, the ceiling. Anyway, just all of this combined being in the corner basically is reflecting the sound back into the room. So it's actually a lot louder than we were told. And there's nothing we can do about that. I also observed that our fan is a little bit off balance. Now apparently there are ways of fixing that from an owner manual, or from an owner perspective. You don't have to send this back. Now, obviously I would have preferred that it was just perfectly balanced out of the box, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna have to take this down at some point and deal with that. Now, I'm kind of on the fence about doing that because it's not light. And the other reason is this is an overnight process for me. So I'm not present to hear the noise anyway. Now, I don't say an Apple Watch is the most accurate instrument for measuring decibels. But if you have one, you know, it has like a noise feature where if you're in an environment that's too loud, it'll warn you and say if you're exposed to this for too long, you can have hearing damage after whatever. I wouldn't say this is an accurate measuring device, but from 8 to 10 feet away, which is basically across the room, it was measuring in around 70 decibels. Now it's rated for 55 to 59 decibels. So that's a bit of a difference. That's probably entirely because of the fan being off balance and it being in the corner. Again, not too pleased about that, but you know, I think varies between units, and if you have it not mounted to a wall, for example, in the corner, it's not being reflected back as much. So maybe your results will vary if you wanted to get one of these hoods. So I'll walk you through kind of our first experience with this thing. In a nutshell, it was a little bit of a disaster. And I'm glad that I did it the way I did it because, well, I needed to make sure that it would work. Essentially, what we did is we ran a burnout during the day on the weekend, and my partner and I just kind of watched movies in the other room and did a little bit of work here and there. And we were just present for the burnout because we wanted to make sure that this was going to do as advertised. Now, we didn't have some of this other information that I'll give you in a little bit at the time, and when we applied those, it really helped a lot. So the first time we did it, burnout was awful. We had, like, this little room was hazy and smoky and really gross. That's because the filters weren't able to work at their best. And the reason for that is that we found out later, as speaking to Quatro, speaking to their engineers and their tech support, is for a number of reasons. Firstly, the charcoal filters work less efficiently the hotter they get. This is not a Quatro thing, this is just a charcoal feature in general. The hotter it gets, the less effective it works. Now, when you're working, or when you have a fan above a kiln, especially a kiln this size, and unfortunately this old, that is inevitable. It's going to get hot. Moreover, in a small room, with the air just being recirculated, there's really no way for the temperature in this room to drop. So it just got hotter and hotter, and the charcoal worked less and less. So that was probably the main reason why it didn't work. The other reason was I was doing a fairly large cast. We were working on a pistol grip project, which had a lot of wax in it. I don't know exactly the volume, but the bronze weight was about 350 grams for just the one flask. And then I had another flask. So that was definitely a factor. These filters can be overwhelmed. So you have to make sure that you're working appropriately. Now, to counteract the overwhelming, to make sure that the filters don't become overwhelmed, we're going to be employing de-waxing from now on. Now, I have another video about this. Make sure you check that out. It'll be somewhere on the timeline. I'm not sure if this video is coming before or after, but anyway, de-waxing. Just remove the wax so that these filters do a lot less work. That was something that we're going to do. Now, that does not work for our 3D printed resins, but we should try it as much as we possibly can. So the last thing that we did wrong, and this is kind of silly in my opinion, on the side, I can't really show you too well, just camera angle, we have an on-off switch, and these fans are actually variable. So there's the lowest and the highest setting. Now, I just assumed crank it up to the highest setting and let it work. Well, that is apparently not the way to go. You need to have it around the mid to low setting for this to have the best impact. In other words, if it's on the highest setting, the fan is too strong and it pulls the air without allowing the filters to do their job. That seems a little bit counterintuitive to me if you're watching this Quatro. I don't see why the air should be allowed to get past the filters unfiltered. Why put an overpowered fan in there anyway, or at least the power settings? Why is it so high that it's ineffective? Yeah, so there's a few things there that are a little bit weird. Now, I do know that this burnout hood is sold, the same body is sold for various purposes. This one is the burnout specified one. You can also use this hood for rhodium plating. You can also use it for particulate filtration, such as mixing investment. And I believe you can also switch it out for soldering as well. So this same body, the filters inside can just be swapped out, and you can use this for a number of things, which was one of the biggest reasons that it appealed to me. Because someday, hopefully, post-COVID, in a future far, far away, I'm hoping to be able to expand the business. So I can, have to have a bigger kiln. We'll have a bigger casting machine, bigger everything, basically just bigger stuff. Anyway, and this filter, as I said, will become outclassed by all of the amount of burnout that we'll have to do. So we'll have to upgrade. But because I can switch these out to do other things, I can have a plating station and have a proper filtration there. And I can just use my same machine. This isn't going to have to be sold or just tucked away and forgotten about. So I think that's a great feature of it. And that usually applies to most ductless systems. They're very versatile. You can change them later. So some of the measures that we went to avoid all of these problems are as follows. Well, the heat, we can't do a whole lot about. The kiln is going to produce heat, and that's just the way it is. Now, what I decided to do, just as a try, was I have some extra fire bricks. Now, these are the very light ones. They're rather expensive, I'm told, about $5 a brick used sometimes. I've got a bunch for my soldering station. They were given to me. They were just in a lot of stuff. So I've decided to put 4 fire bricks, basically just cover the top with these bricks, just loose. And that is just adding an extra layer of insulation to the kiln. My kiln is very old. If you have a new kiln, that's probably not going to be an issue. Second thing is I have a door dividing this room from the other room. I thought it would be wise to just contain the fumes and let the room circulate and become cleaner, basically. Well, that's not what we should be doing. I'm going to leave that door open from now on and allow cool air to get in to mix with the ambient air so that this can actually do its job better. Third thing, we're going to be doing steam dewaxing, as I mentioned. Fourth, I turn the heat off in my little building here. We just have like an old style boiler radiator, so it's just a matter of turning that off. No problem, very easy. And actually, because the kiln is the kiln is creating heat and the filter being recirculated, the building feels pretty much normal anyway. I don't notice too big a difference when I turn the heat off, even during this Canadian winter, which by the way is very warm, global warming. And lastly, we turned the fan down to medium. This was a recommendation from Quatro. They're the ones who told me that the fan was overdrawing, becoming too powerful and overwhelming the filters. So yeah, those are the 5 things that we're doing differently. And in our experience so far, the burnout went really well, actually. Now I did have a lot less wax involved, so that was kind of naturally going to happen with the steam dewaxing. I let it run overnight. I wasn't present for it, but when I came in the morning, the shop was still relatively warm, and not really any different. There was barely a smell of fumes to be smelled at all. Now, I don't really want to smell anything whatsoever, so hopefully this gets better in the future. So would I recommend this tool to you all? Well, it's a very arbitrary number I'll give you. I'm going to rate it an 8 out of 10. And I'll explain why. For starters, it does work. It works really well circumstantially. I wish that they had been more upfront about some of these conditions that need to be met to make it work well. I suppose that's what I'm doing now, but I wish that the manufacturer had been more upfront about that when I bought it. The way it's advertised is this kind of magic end all. It just works every time. You don't have to worry about heat. You don't have to do any of that stuff. It just works. And that is not the reality. Now, I should have realized that that was probably a little bit too good to be true, but you know, you buy into things and then you end up, it's not quite right, but it doesn't quite not fit. It's a gray area. So another really good reason that I recommend this is because of its versatility. Being that it can be for burnout, plating, like rhodium plating, investment mixing, soldering, you know, what have you. It's very, very versatile. So I really like that. I will be using this machine till it's dead, really, till it just breaks and I can't fix it anymore. And I don't think that's going to be, I think that's going to be a pretty tall order because, quite frankly, it's just a fan in a housing. The fan can be replaced, basically, and filters can be replaced. So, you know, it's going to be a good investment in the long run. Now, related to cost, up front, I spent a little bit more than 1,600 Canadian rubles. So, would I recommend it for that price? Maybe shop around a little bit, but like, what is it worth to you? If you're at home, maybe it's not worth it. If you're downtown doing a business like me, where you've got a casting thing, you've got clients, you have people relying on it, yeah, it's definitely gonna work. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you have, say, the RB ductless hood system or another brand, I honestly don't know how many different types there are out there. I implore you, please post a video about it, even just a quick little tour, because these are such a niche product that I can't find videos about them anywhere. And there are others out there who would benefit from this information, so I would very much love it if you could put up a video like that. Even just a brief tour explaining how it works, some of the differences, the ins and outs, it would be awesome. So I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped you. If you're interested in supporting this channel, we have a membership program somewhere down here. There are 3 tiers with features that I don't remember off the top of my head. So if you'd like to support us, that would be awesome. If you found this video informative and helpful, please give us a like and a subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of this kind of content. I will see everyone in the next video. Something I forgot to mention while my camera was set up nice, if you just look under here, you can see there's a couple of mounting points for the hood. Now they also make a tabletop adapter for this hood, basically so that it just sits on your table. It doesn't get bolted to the wall. So depending on what you are wanting, they do have those options. I was very tempted to get the tabletop option. However, I'm glad I didn't, because my kiln is a little bit too wide, as you can see with this power box. If it wasn't for this, the control panel, I think it would have worked. If you have a Paragon SC2 or SC3, I think it would be fine. I bet you don't even really have to have your kiln completely under the hood, as long as that's where the exhaust is coming out, the fumes. Something else I should note, that there's also options for the fan. So you can get a silencer. Now, I've been told that the silencer basically only drops the decibels by 5, basically. Like so if it works from 55 to 59 decibels, it'll drop it to like 50 tops. Not a huge improvement for $120, so I've been told, but there is that option. There's also an option to have it duct and go outside. It's just basically just like an adapter plate, and then it goes out. You have to have your own duct work, but it's just an adapter plate that gets bolted on the top. Now, why you would want that, especially if it's supposed to be filtering fumes, I don't know. Not my thing. If I was gonna do that, I would have just got a $60 fan or $100 fan and saved a ton of money. But that's just me. So there is that as well to consider.